Okay, I think we're going to get started. Top of the hour. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Leadership's Greatest Hits, Timeless Skills for Better Leadership. I know everyone's busy today, so we appreciate you spending an hour with us for our free webinar. There are some familiar faces online, but for those of you who don't know us, let me tell you a little bit about Slingshot 25. We are a business consulting company, and we focus on the areas of leadership and change. And our presenters today, Courtney Smock and Jackie Pelland, both worked in corporate America for about 25 years, focused in these areas before leaving to start Slingshot 25. And so they've been doing this work for a long time. Our primary areas of service can be really put into these three buckets: leadership training, leading change, and leader coaching. And after years of creating solutions in the corporate world, everything from creating leadership development programs and curriculum to leading the largest M&A in aerospace and defense and everything in between, they have literally been there and done that. So that is also why all of our content is developed in-house, because they know that every business, every organization, every team has its own unique challenges and needs. They are also IPEC certified coaches, which gives them a little bit of a unique approach, and it is literally ingrained into everything we do. And our clients tell us that all the time. Our training and our workshops and speaking gigs feel different to them. And we believe that part of that is our coaching. If you have not visited our website, please do that. We just launched a new one last week, and we are very proud of it, slingshot25.com. There you will find information about all of our products and services, all of our courses and speaking gigs and all of that good stuff. But you will also find a library of a lot of free stuff. So we offer articles, we have videos. Jackie does a video series called Jack Chats, Tiny Lessons in Leadership. We do our Shotcast podcast, and we also have information about free events like these webinars. So please go check it out. You can also subscribe to our newsletter and get all of that good stuff delivered straight to your inbox. So bookmark it, visit often, share it with your friends. Without further ado, we're going to get started, and I'm going to hand it over to Jackie.
Yay. Okay. So here we go. Leadership greatest hits. And just like your favorite greatest hits album, we are going to be digging into the past. We're going to look back and say, what are all of those lessons in leadership that have stood the test of time? And we're going to see what we can find there. Now, if we go to the next slide, you will see that we have a little bit of extra work to do, though. Um, just like your favorite greatest hits album, so as you think about, it's weird to even think about albums anymore, isn't it? All of a sudden, that's just like nobody really thinks about that anymore. But I think some of you have been around a few years like us, and you can think about like your greatest hits album that came out, and there was some on there that you're like, yeah, that one really stood the test of time, and others you're like, yeah, maybe not so much. Like I'm not quite sure why that one made the album. Um, the same is true if we keep, if we take this metaphor into the world of leadership lessons, the same is true here. And it can be a little bit hard to find some of those greatest hits in leadership lessons that have stood the test of time because they're often buried under, some remixes, let's call them, some remixes that have not exactly stood the test of time. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I've got a few actually. And I'll start with one that is really simple. And I mention it a lot when I talk about how we can get easily distracted by some leadership lessons that aren't particularly, they're not exactly a greatest hit. They won't stand the test of time. And the first one that comes to mind for me is this idea, as an example here, this idea that when you're having a one-on-one with someone, if you want to be seen as a great leader, you should not sit behind your desk while you're having a one-on-one with them. Instead, you should get up from behind your desk and walk around. Maybe you have a table available to you in your office, or just sit down next to them, or better yet, go to their office, go sit in their guest chair. The thing is, there's nothing really wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to tell you, it's not going to make our greatest hits list, though, because the reason it won't is that you can do all of that. You can come out from behind your desk, you can go be a guest in their office, and you can still be an absolute jerk. So it's a performative thing that's not the bedrock of truth. The truth there, of course, is that you have to show up differently. You have to be a different kind of leader in that moment. So there's an example. Another couple of examples that come to mind for me here that are sort of a bad remix on some what should have been a good leadership lesson. It's this idea of of I'm not here to be liked. I'm a leader, but my job, I'm not here to be liked. I'm not here to make friends. Well, that's not actually altogether untrue. The job of a leader, if you say the empirical job of a leader is not to make friends and not to be liked, you would be right in that. That is not the empirical job of a leader. But our point is by chasing that lesson, by using that as a lesson, by considering that a leadership lesson, it causes you to miss the point. It causes you to miss the point, in this case, by a mile, because the truth is that highly effective leaders, ones that are really good, think back to some leaders you've had that you thought were really good. They actually tend to be liked. Their followers tend to like them, but they didn't set out to aim for that. And so when we get caught around a lesson like this, what we call a remix of a good leadership lesson, we end up missing a much deeper point, which again, as in the first one, it's really a matter of how you show up as a leader, how you think as a leader. And the last one that I'll bring up here is you kind of get the point, because we have as much unlearning to do always as we do learning new things, is this idea of, hey, it's not personal, it's just business. I'm guessing some of you have said that. I'm guessing some of you have had that said to you. Again, there's only a partial truth to this one. There is some partial truth. Like the fact of the matter, it is business. That's absolutely true. And we are all committed. If we're talking to each other at work, then we have said we've committed to doing the work of this business. This is business. We are committed to meeting those goals. Indeed, we've signed employment contracts, if you really want to look at it like, really pragmatically. So yeah, we have committed to treat this like a business and to serve the business. But when we say it's just business, it's not personal, we lose the deeper truth here, because the truth, of course, is that it's both. It is business and it's personal. And frankly, when people say it's not personal, it's just business, what they're usually going for is a place to hide, to not have to deal with the personal and only deal with the business. So you get this idea of there has been some confusing things through the decades as we go back and search for the greatest hits. They are sometimes buried under some remixes that were not so popular, that should not have made the greatest hits album. And so now we're going to bring to you now three, what we think are truly greatest leadership hits. And we may have to remix these a little. And actually, I think what we're doing, Courtney, is we're unmixing them. We are unmixing them back to a deeper truth that stands the test of time. So let's take a look at the first one. We don't mess around. We're going to go right into some deep leadership philosophy with this first truth. It's a truth about how we think. If any of you have been in a classroom with me, you might even recognize this. We talk about this a lot because it is, I want to say that this might be the truth at the bottom of everything. We have a course that's called The Truth of Leading Others. This in this philosophy, it's certainly based around this philosophy. This philosophy also shows up in other of our popular programs like Conversations that move people forward. Conversations is absolutely based on this sort of deeper leadership truth, deeper philosophy of how we think. This is what you're looking at right now, is what we call the human operating system. You're not going to find, you won't be able to Google human operating system and come up with this. You probably would actually end up on some sort of medical, in some sort of medical website. We're not talking about that part of how humans work. We're not talking about hearts beating and nerve systems and all of this. We're talking about the mind. We're talking about how the mind works, how we think. And so let's just clear this and clear this chart, as they say, and see what we discover here as an essential truth. And of course, we're going to be narrowing in on, as we talk about this, we want to get to that place where we're talking about the space, because this space is an essential truth that has absolutely stood the test of time. As a matter of fact, its origins come from at least 100 years ago in terms of how it got defined. But it's been around, I would say, since we crawled out of the caves. All right, so let's just look at this. We've got, of course, three circles going on here. You see that? Let's start with the first. So, we'll go left to right. In the first circle, we see a human there, and this is representing the circle around this human is representing the environment. And you can see that the environment is acting in on that human, that representation of a human there. It's pushing in on them, and it's causing a thought. That's what this first circle is representing. And that's you, by the way. It's you in this very moment. You are sitting in an environment right now. I'm part of your environment. My voice is part of your environment. The multitasking that I know you're doing is also part of your environment. Yeah, I'm sure, as you looked over to your other monitor and your boss sent you an email and you're like, "Oh crap, the boss sent me an email." That's part of your environment. All of these things are coming at you. As a matter of fact, scientists have said in any given conscious moment, meaning you're awake, any given conscious moment, you have about 11 million bits of data coming at you. Most of it just falls away. Most of it goes unnoticed by your conscious mind. It comes and it goes. It registers somewhere in there, but it doesn't surface to sort of your conscious awareness. In other words, it doesn't form a thought. It just comes and goes. You don't even necessarily notice it. And that's a really good thing, that our brains are wired for that kind of efficiency, that let most of what comes at us go in a day, or our brains would have to be about 10 times their size. And I think we can all imagine what our heads would look like if our brains were 10 times their size. So that wouldn't work out very well. So we're super efficient. Stuff comes at us. Some of it rises to a conscious thought. That's great. That's great. But it gets tricky right here. This is where stuff starts to get problematic for us as a leader. What thought? Like what kind of thought? Where does that thought come from? Why? What forms that thought? And so here I'm going to offer another analogy or metaphor for you. I want you to imagine a fisherman out on the sea, and he casts a net into the ocean and pulls in a giant haul of fish. And he's sorting through the fish and he says, "Aha, I have discovered two truths about all of life in the sea. One is that, or all the fish in the sea, I should say, all these fish he's hauled in, all the fish in the sea, I have two absolute truths. One is that all fish are greater than 2 inches long. Two is that all fish have gills." Well, you can start to reason right away which one of those truths is probably not right. That all fish are greater than 2 inches long, we know that that is not the case. So why? Why would he reason that? And of course, it doesn't take very long for you to realize, well, his net has 2-inch holes, and so therefore anything under 2 inches is not going to be caught up in the net. But the other one, all fish have gills, now that's a property of the fish itself. And that one, he might be right about that. He might be right about that. Turns out he is right about it. All fish have gills. So he's right about that one, but all fish are greater than 2 inches. No, that one was a property of the net, not the fish, right? That was a property of the net. And so, of course, in this metaphor, you should be figuring out that the net is your mind. Your mind has a shape, if you will. It's hard for us to even fathom that. It's hard for us to even think about that. But your mind is like the net. It has a shape. It will filter things out and let other things in. And the shape of your mind depends very much on you, on who you are, your experiences, your failures, your successes, the path you have walked leading up right to this very moment shape your mind. It's like sometimes we refer to that as like lenses on life. So all of that environment is coming at you and it goes through that net or those lenses. And some of what you end up thinking is true, and some of it Not so true. It has slipped through the net, if you will, of your mind. And so you see that statement on there, don't believe everything you think. I'm not saying don't believe anything you think. I'm saying don't believe everything you think, because some of what you think is formed by essentially a property of your mind. Okay, so if that's not mind-blowing enough. Ooh, I told you, we jump right in. We're in the thick of it now. So now we have to think about the next circle, which is what happens next. And it happens so next, like so rapidly. You get this thought, everything's coming through your net, your filter, your lenses, and you get a thought, and that thought instantly creates a feeling. Instantly, the ones that come to your conscious mind instantly creates a feeling. It could be, a feeling of hope, a feeling of despair, love, fear, sympathy, sorrow, any of those feelings instantly created and happens so fast as you don't know the difference between the two. By the way, everything I've described in this human operating system that I've taken like 10 minutes to describe probably takes less than a nanosecond to actually happen. All of this just happens as a result of the environment coming at us. So we get this feeling. And it's those two things together. Those two things weave tightly together. They appear almost to be the same thing in terms of how we can perceive it. Those two things together then lead us into the third circle, which is what we choose to say and do. What we say and do is the third circle. That's actions. In other words, a really fast way of saying this is first circle is thoughts, second circle is feelings, third circle is actions. Thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions. And so it's true that we are sentient beings. We are driven by our feelings. We are driven not just by thoughts, but also by feelings, right? We say it this way, we use logic and reasoning. All is not lost. We're not completely driven by every emotion. Some we are, really strong ones we tend to be. But we use logic and reasoning, but with all of that logic and reasoning also comes emotion. And those two things combine together, and we are driven into our thought or to our actions and including our words, the things we say. Okay, so what? So what? Well, the so what of this is that's how you lead. That's how you're leading every single day. Every leadership moment that you are in, you are operating across this cycle. And that's where the space comes in. You can just keep on doing that. As a matter of fact, you will just keep on doing that. If you wake up every day and go to work and do your thing, you're going to be operating along this cycle according to this operating system. That is going to be you. But if you want to make a choice in how you lead, if you want to lead according to your own values, to your personal code of ethics, to what you think is the right way to lead, what the space is telling you is that you do not have to be a mere, I guess, cog, victim. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for here of your environment. You can choose. You can choose that third circle. You can choose exactly what you want to say or do in that third circle. Some days and some moments and some people around you might really challenge you to believe that. You think you have no choice. How many of you have ever actually said, I had no choice? I had no choice. Of course you have a choice. And that space represents the choice. But it takes number one, recognizing that it's there.
Hey, Jack.
Recognize. Yeah, go ahead,
Something's
Courtney.
coming to mind. You're describing that. I had someone tell me last week, and if you're on this call, you can ping in here. I don't remember who said what, but they said, yeah, I used to tell when I was with my grandma, things would happen, and I would say, you made me mad, right? And
Mm.
it's if you first said, oh, they made me mad, they pissed me off, that whatever they did. And the person said, and my grandma would look at me and say, the only thing I make you is dinner.
Yeah, that's right.
It's that
Wisdom of grandmas.
that wisdom of grandma's, and it's someone saying, like, when you say someone else makes you something, you're missing the space,
You're
right? You're
missing.
missing the space between how you feel and how you act.
That's right.
The only thing other people make you is maybe dinner.
And you're lucky if that's the case.
You're lucky if that happens, right?
Yeah. And so this space, this is the real leadership lesson here is the space. This is sometimes called the Viktor Frankl space. Because Viktor Frankl was an author that's where I said this comes from, the writings about this come from about 100 years ago. Viktor Frankl was an author. He was a Jewish man who went through World War II in Germany. He was in the Nazi concentration camps. And, so he experienced all of that. He experienced all of that. And when he was liberated and he wrote about his experience, this is one of the things that he wrote about. And so he gets quoted for saying, now I'll have to tell you, the quote is really an amalgamation more of his writing and other people commenting on his writing than an actual direct quote. But he gave us this intelligence with his writing. And remember, he is writing this, and it was in a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was writing about this space, about what he learned about controlling himself in those horrendous conditions. And so, Courtney, your grandma's right. No one, I mean, especially think about our lives today and how relatively easy our lives are today compared to that. And then we still have the audacity to say someone made me do something. That sounds pretty silly in comparison, doesn't it? So here's what Viktor Frankl teaches us. He says between stimulus and response, remember that's the environment, the circles around us there, the environment and our response, what we choose to say and do. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I think that is a remarkable thing when we consider that pausing, just pausing, and I don't mean pause and stare off into space for hours or minutes. I mean, almost as fast a pause as it took you to get the feeling in the first place and the thought in the first place is just to pause and say, how do I want to respond in this moment? You do not have to have the environment dictate that to you. You have a choice. And leaders, really good leaders, know about that space. They use it frequently, not all of the time. You're no saint. You're no saint. You will have moments that you bail right on across this operating system and end up doing something that you look back and say, yeah, I sort of fumbled that leadership moment. I didn't act how I would choose to act in that moment. But when you get used to the idea of this space, when you find it, when you use it, it becomes a superpower, and it is a path to freedom, a freedom of setting down all of the things about the circumstances of your leadership that are just too heavy. You can set those things down, and you can choose to act in a way that is aligned to your personal values, to your personal code of ethics. In other words, you can choose a new thought. You can choose to think differently and therefore act differently. Because how you act, the other thing that is really sort of missing from this model, and it could be added, is there's an arrow going all the way from your actions right around back again to your thoughts. Because what you choose to say and do, you now are acting upon the environment that then changes the environment that then changes you. Woof, that was a deep one. That was a deep one. But just to summarize this very deep point, this very deep, classic, been around since we've crawled out of the caves, is this space is always available to you. It's available to you right in this very moment. It will be available to you in the next 5 minutes and the next 5 minutes after that, and on and on and on. And I might suggest you use it to be the kind of leader that at the end of the day, people will follow because they want to. The kind of leader that you really want to be. Oof. That, Courtney, I think we should take a look at the next one.
I'm going to take a breath in this space. Well done. I love it. So we're introducing some of what we think are like the fundamental truths I'm going to teach you. Some of you have been in our classes. You've heard us talk about the nudge. Most people on this call probably haven't heard of it. I hope this is new today for some of you. The nudge comes out of all the questions we get on a daily and weekly basis about accountability. Like we can't have a greatest, it's kind of like you can't have a greatest hits album without a jammer and a slow song. Like we got to talk about accountability if we're going to come up with a hit. And the nudge is, for those of you just hearing it for the first time, it's a technique that we teach. We do not teach a lot of techniques at Slingshot. You'll hear us say that a lot. We teach you to think differently, which is why we started with the space. Think differently first. But the nudge is an actual technique, and it is the first step in creating accountability and being a leader who um, says it's my responsibility to help people know what impact their work is having on others. So the nudge, how you do it, you guys can write this down. Um, it's very simple. You say to someone who is not living up to your expectations, who has missed the mark on something, it can be tiny, but the moment something happens with someone that you're responsible to hold them accountable and you see a behavior that doesn't match your expectations, you're going to say to them, "Hey, I noticed. Hey, I noticed." And then you're going to fill in the blank with the behavior that you noticed. "Hey, I noticed you slammed a door. Hey, I noticed you didn't speak up and I know you had something to say. Hey, I noticed you lost your temper. Hey, I noticed you were late." And that's the first half of the nudge. And what you're saying to someone, in order to hold people accountable, you have to set an expectation. You cannot hold people accountable for something that you haven't set an expectation for. So with the nudge, you're saying, "Hey, I noticed, fill in what you expect." And guess what? When you say, "Hey, I noticed you were late," what are you really saying? "I expect you to be on time." "Hey, I noticed you slammed a door. I expect you not to do things like that," right? It is a, "Hey, I noticed," set the expectation. "Hey, I missed you at the meeting yesterday," right? "I expected you to be at the meeting." Hear that? That's the first half. The second half of the nudge is everything okay? Is everything okay? "Hey, I noticed you didn't make the meeting. Is everything okay?" Look at this sweet little dude that we have on our picture. Why would we pick a sweet little dude, this little guy, just gently nudging, right? Bumping into something that may or may not move. The doorbell's going to ring and it's the mailman. We're going to ignore him. Um, or someone's going to disappear on one of these windows. I don't know. Um, it's just a nudge. Like, isn't that sweet? Like, you just bump into it and say, "Hey, I noticed. Is everything okay?" That's how you do it. And when it comes to accountability, we picked this image and had quite a discussion. We were designing this, that that's how we want to show up with accountability. We want to show up in a strong, caring, open way that people feel like you feel that expectation. And most important, in the is everything okay? We're leading with caring. We're leading with belief. We're leading with checking in. Really great leaders care about their people. And so when we say to you, "Is everything okay?" Our lead is with caring. It's with sensitivity. It's with space, right? Some of the space that Jackie talked about. What's maybe, the opposite side of this guy is what's on the other end of this little guy, right? You what is it? You hit the spurs, you're going to get kicked. We could have put a picture of a bucking bronco and heels up. When we tend to treat accountability, I think, I don't know if this happens a lot. I'm not going to pretend to measure it, but there is a misconception about accountability that accountability has to be hard. It has to hurt. We have to slam into people. We have to, kick them right in the teeth and get them where they're going. Like there is this edge to accountability that honestly, it's not effective. We get there because we missed our little moments when someone did something small. We didn't have the courage to nudge them. We didn't check in when we first saw it. And that little molehill, that little thing that just didn't seem right, we let it go. Hope that doesn't happen again, right? Hope becomes a strategy of, "Oh, maybe they'll never slam another door." Okay, and then we cross our hearts or do whatever we do. And the door slammings continue, the disrespect continues, those issues raise and raise and raise and raise. And now it's a big deal, and we have to put something hard down on it, right? We got to kick it. We got to, um, address it, whatever. And it feels like our response to accountability has to be harsh. It has to be clear. It has to be direct. It has to be on point, even to the point where I think there's sometimes when leaders they build themselves up and say, man, I'm such a great leader because I really showed them, right? I really showed them. I went, put the hammer down, right? I just keep seeing the heels of this little guy, right? Up in the air and you land a punch because you let it get to be such a big deal that now it is a big deal and you had no other choice but to go in strong and try to put some force behind that big thing that's been building, right? So the nudge is about proactively, the moment you see something, believing in your people enough to say, hey, I noticed that you're not behaving in a way that I would expect. You're not behaving in a way that's aligned with your values. You're not behaving in the way that we want. You're not behaving in a way that aligns with our values and our culture. Is everything okay? I care about you. Tell me how I can help. Tell me what's going on with you.
One of
And
the things I
this,
like about that, Courtney, if I
yeah,
can add, you
please.
mentioned in there that the nudge is really helpful to creating that space. It creates space. And I read something recently where someone said a really great way of thinking about how effective you are at leading is, do you create space for people or do you take space from people? And the nudge is a great way to open some space for someone. As you're creating an environment of accountability around them, you are opening some space for them to think about the behavior and not in a threatening way, a way that is less likely to get them to armor up and shut down space. It opens space with the, is everything okay?
Yeah. And the thing that's amazing, I just told, I don't know, there's 40 people on this call. We just told you the secret and we teach in our classes. And I'm going to tell you it works. Even when you know it's coming, even when you know the person that's saying it to you has just been taught the trick. Jackie, you can tell your story. I can tell it. Do you want to
Oh,
tell your story about how we know it
yeah,
works?
yeah. We know it works
It puts her
because
in a good light, so I want
yeah,
to let her
yeah.
tell it.
Because I was working for someone, and I don't know if that someone is on this call today or not. Sometimes she is. I
Yeah.
was working for someone, and I taught this to my boss and all my peers on, just on like a quick lesson on our staff call one time. This was back obviously before I joined, before we started Slingshot, and so I taught this thing called the nudge. It's great. Thanks for the lesson, Jackie, and on with the agenda. And a couple of weeks later, I showed up on another staff call, and I don't know what was going on with me that day. I really don't know. I don't really recall, but I do remember that I was not my best self. I was grouchy. I was, I think, snarky, sarcastic, cynical. I tend towards that. That's true. I tend towards that behavior now and then again. So I showed up that way. But I felt like I felt like I got away with it, I guess. The staff call was over, I disconnect. This was, I think, during COVID. And then that night I'm sitting on the couch watching the TV, and on my cell phone, here comes a text from that boss that says, "Hey, Jackie, I noticed you weren't your best self on the staff call today. Is everything okay?" And I got so excited. My husband was sitting there, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Doug, look at this. Look at this. She remembered the nudge. She remembered that. That's so amazing. I must be such a great teacher. She remembered the nudge. It stuck with her." And then a few minutes elapsed, and then I had this moment of like, well, oh crap. I just got nudged. and and it worked. I mean, there it was. I of course know exactly the structure of this thing. I just taught it weeks prior, and it still worked. It still worked, to Courtney's point. It still works. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just that way of saying, I see you, I notice your behavior because I care. It's a part of being a present leader. And I'm just asking you, I'm not bringing the kitchen sink to this thing. I'm just saying, are you okay? What's going on? It
I
works.
love it. I love that story. You're like, oh, I see it coming, and it still works. So I'd encourage you to try it. Um, The reason the nudge works is because you have, for the most part, intelligent, caring people who want to be valued, who want to be cared about, who want to make a difference. And when you point out your expectations aren't being met, human beings are insanely self-correcting organisms. They want your favor. They want to do what's expected. They want to be their best selves most of the time. Now I know y'all have someone's head that popped, face that just popped in your head. You're like, not that guy. Okay, that person's probably a performance issue. But for the rest of your people, a nudge will go a long way to address your accountability issues. You can use the nudge for change expectations. It's a great time when you're changing things and people are kind of confused about the expectations and they're overwhelmed. Just nudge them and say, hey, I noticed you weren't following the new process. Is everything okay? But not following the new process because they want to use the old one because they're more comfortable with it. It's just a gentle way to remind them we have some new expectations. Something changed, right? Just use it over and over because it works. And then believe in your people. Because when you believe that when they know what's expected, they'll do it, they'll respond to those expectations and they'll rise and meet them. And if they don't, there's more class to that, right? There's other accountability steps that we teach in our classes. So I think I will move on. Jackie, anything else you want to add? I think I'll move on. I don't see any
No, not too
questions. I don't know
bad.
if people can ask questions on this. All right, so then let's peek at um the third hit. This might be the shortest greatest hits in record, but we did three big hits. The irony. And I want to talk about I know we shouldn't have favorites, just like I shouldn't have favorite kids and Jackie shouldn't have favorite cats, but we have favorites, and it's hard to pick, but we talk about humility a lot around here. Humility, humility, humility. If you walk in our door, there's a big sign that says, you're just not that big a deal. Um, Humility, our favorite definition of humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less often. Humility is an exercise in frequency. And one of our core skills in the Truth of Leading Others class that we teach as we develop leaders is how important it is to build a skill that allows you to think about others, to get curious about others, to support others, to advocate for others. That's what good leaders do. That's a greatest hit right there. Be humble. And we want to put a little twist on it, like a little twist on humility, that there is a certain amount of irony in humility, that there's an opposite of humility that's actually insecurity. When we use that definition of humble people are thinking about themselves less, it stands to reason that, oh my gosh, I just ripped my own earring out of my head. Oh my, that hurt. Jesus, damaged myself on the call. Whoopsie daisy. Um, when, if anyone can remember what I was saying, now I got it just a second. So when we are being insecure, all of our thoughts are about who? They're about ourselves. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Will they like me? Do I have it right? What are they going to say? Is my fly down? All of our energy is focused on ourselves, and that is not humble. And so the irony that we want to introduce in our greatest hits today is that in order for you to be humble, you have to believe in yourself. And I'll say that again slower, like in a core ingredient of humility is self-assurance. A core ingredient of humility is confidence. A core ingredient of humility is being an expert and having experience and standing on what you know and who you are. And it's kind of hard to wrap your head around that that is an ingredient for humility, because conventional wisdom in the world would say that humble people are small. Even that is arrogance, right? That we're humble if we don't be, my grandma was got my grandma on every call. Tall poppy, right? You're not boastful, you don't brag. But one of the things that really great leaders do is they strike this irony, we put it on here, this balance between I can stand here in my value, in my experience, with my knowledge, with my expertise. And I show up to each moment to take care of, to support, to care about, to value every single person around me. That's what really great leaders do. They stand in their power and use it to help other people, to make the team stronger, to create opportunities for other people to grow, to challenge people in just the right way. And you can't do that if you're playing small. You can't do that if you're questioning yourself. You can't do that if you're scared. That's ironic that we need you, like this sweet little girl, right, to own your power in order to be humble and serve others, because that's what great leaders do. They find that mix and they find that split. We love humility, but we're also going to ask you to stand on it, right? Stand on your experience, stand on your knowledge, stand on your own personal power, and then keep your mouth shut and get really curious about other people and how you help them. Because it's still not about you, but it can't be so much not about you that you start sucking the energy of the world and the questions back to yourself. Um, I want to say one other thing, but Jack, do you want to add anything?
Um, this is you're just making me think about oftentimes in the classroom when we have people talk about humility, they say humility is about lowering yourself down to someone else's level. And then they follow that with and not being arrogant. I just find that really kind of funny. Like it really takes an arrogant person to think that they have to lower themselves down. Um, yeah, I just think this is insecurity. This, of course, we're talking about insecurity is the great irony here that insecure people, and by the way, insecure people are far more common than arrogant people. And most arrogance is really just a way of showing up to hide insecurities.
Insecurity. Yeah.
Yeah, there's very few. I mean, again, I'm not going to pretend to have some data on this right now, but there's very few people that are just to the core arrogance. And they probably fall in that realm of sociopathy where they are lacking the social emotions of love and regret and shame and all of those sorts of things. And so that's probably anchored in them in a way that is just genuinely there's an arrogance about them. And they can still be quite charming and polite and all of that, but they probably have a true sense of arrogance. For the rest of us, the irony is that that arrogance is really born of an insecurity. And it's until we deal with that insecurity, until we realize that there is never going to be a moment when we will be enough, according to our own definition of enough, smart enough, savvy enough, skilled enough, all of that. There's never going to arrive a moment where we will be enough. And the only way then to get through that is to accept that we are already just enough. We are enough as we are, and that's where that sort of sense of confidence can come from, is to accept that you are enough. And then through that sort of sense of confidence that rises, you are then able to stop thinking about yourself all the damn time.
Right.
And you're able to show up to leadership moments thinking about what this moment means to someone else, not just you, not just how does this reflect on me? How does this make me look strong or weak? But instead to show up to that moment with how is someone else processing this moment? When change is happening in the organization, how is that change impacting them? You can only do that if you've done the work to set down some of your own insecurities. That's a truly humble person.
And the thing I wanted to add to that is that we've had this come up a lot this month where there's a whole discussion about, oh, I have imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And I don't really believe in imposter syndrome. I think we have a belief here that everybody's got insecurity.
Everyone.
Everyone has insecurity. When you make it a syndrome and you turn all that energy on yourself, you are not practicing humility. And there is some things going on, that we tend to tell women and people of color, oh, you're insecure. But the truth is, every single person has insecurity. It's part of being human. And if you feed it, if you question yourself, if you choose not to believe in yourself, you're not being humble. Because guess what? Everything I just said was about you. Stop thinking about yourself so damn much. Stop diagnosing yourself. Stop thinking you need to fix yourself and turn your talents and your energy and your skills onto the people around you and and get busy thinking about how you can help them. And watch your syndrome dry up because you're going to get really busy being productive. You're going to get really busy being helpful. You're going to get really busy being followed. And it's just all related. It's all in a continuum. So the irony is, go believe in yourself. That's the greatest hits of being a leader. Focus your energy on others. And I'm gonna go back to challenge how you think. Pay attention to how you think. Those are
I'll
the
also
three.
add this happens to be a really great networking trick as well for someone who's looking for something particularly pragmatic out of this lesson. If you have to go to a networking event where you don't know anyone, this is all of what Courtney just said. Do that. Like, stop thinking about yourself when you walk in the room rather than thinking like everyone's staring at me. What if I say something stupid? What if I don't have something pithy to say? What if I don't remember that person's name and I've met them before? Happens to me all the time. What if? Well, what if you stop thinking about yourself and you start just find someone in the room to focus on and think about them? You'll watch your sort of your insecurities and your nervousness. It doesn't go away altogether. It's not that magic of a bullet, but pretty close.
Softens. It
Pretty close.
softens. All right. So that's what we have on our lessons. Jack, you want to tell them about a exciting new thing we have
Yeah.
going on? We're super excited about this.
Yes. So we have a course called Conversations That Move People Forward, and we are hosting a public session of this. And I think an email just went out about that this morning to many of those on our mailing list. If you didn't receive it, well, you need to get in the know. And the date of that course escapes me right now, and I threw away my paper that says it. So Kim Garrett can tell me what date that course is. She'll look that
August
up for us.
14th.
August 14th. There we go. We're doing a public session, meaning anyone on this call can just go on out to our website and enroll in that class. And we encourage you to, because this course, it's a single day course, and we'll leave you with some really great thinking and some tools and some resources and some experiments to try. It takes all of what we just talked about and it puts it into the setting of you having a conversation with someone else. So we're going to teach all of those skills around feedback and accountability and how to show up in a conversation, how to conduct yourself in that conversation so that you are taking advantage of that pause and being the kind of leader that you really want to be. We'll talk about all the stuff that gets tangled up here that prevents us from doing that, and we'll let you play around with some of those skills in a fun way. So it's a great class. We love doing it. Always have a great time. So we encourage you to join us in that session. We also happen to do this course as well. Like Kim's like, okay, and be done now, Jackie. We also happen to deliver this course as well. If you're here from a large organization where you have a lot of people who you want to train in a class like that, of course, you can give us a call. I think most of our customers know this at this point. Give us a call, and we can, of course, host some private sessions inside your organization as well. And now I'm done.
That's what I was going to add. So that's great. Thank you, everyone. Just wrapping up again with our website. So if you didn't check it out at the beginning, bookmark it, go visit. And if there was anything that struck you today and you want to talk more, we will be sending you a survey tomorrow with a link to the recording, or you can just go to our website and fill out the contact us form. And so there's lots of ways to reach us. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.